The Map of Caring Clues, a summer spark quest in small acts. First morning of summer, Lina stopped on her front steps. Ocean wind flicked hair into her eyes. From her backpack, a hand-drawn map slid free, smelling like pencil shavings and old books. In the corner, tiny symbols marched. Tools, a speech bubble, a clock, a ribboned parcel, a handprint. Lines on the paper sketched her town in soft graphite. The pier and its gulls, the quiet library with lamplight at dusk. The soccer field striped in chalk, the neighborhood park with its sun-faded slides. A breeze salted the air and ruffled the map's edges as if it too were restless. The symbols in the corner tugged at her attention. Tools, bubble, clock, parcel, handprint. Like a coded legend waiting to unlock. Quest, the word pulsed. Her brain filled the blanks with secret sheds, trapdoors, riddles hidden under planks that creaked only at midnight. She imagined sprinting across dunes, a zipline singing over the boardwalk, her shoes hitting wood with a superhero thud. Find what matters, the note said. Lina tapped the map's edge, catching herself before she ran full tilt into summer. She wanted something loud, a story big enough to echo. She folded the map and slid it into her pocket, every cell in her legs ready to launch the day. The community center hall hummed like a hive. Citrus-bright Summer Spark Quest banners rippled in the air conditioning, and the bulletin board bristled with sign-up sheets. Lanyards lay in bright lines across folding tables like candy necklaces. Lina nudged her bike helmet under her arm and drifted through laughter and sneaker squeaks, her gaze sketching possible teams. A table offered markers and clipboards. Another offered bowls of wrapped mints, tiny bells of sweetness she ignored in favor of the map burning in her pocket. She spotted the chalk arrows outside the glass doors, pointing toward a finish line she could not yet see. The string lights zigzagged overhead, unlit, waiting for evening. Part of her wanted to grab strangers who looked fast, loud, certain. Another part tugged at the frayed ribbon in her hair, a habit when choices felt bigger than they looked. She craned, searching for Priya, and for a teammate who would say yes to ridiculous ideas and sprint beside her without asking too many questions. Priya waved from a table, braid over her shoulder. Team up? I brought snacks. Jaden nodded from the corner, tiny screwdriver in hand. Mateo leaned against the doorway, one earbud in. Mrs. Ortega handed out lanyards. Lina hesitated, then, "Fine, us four." The bell at Mrs. Ortega's elbow winked. "Spark Quest isn't a race," Mrs. Ortega said, voice warm as her sea-green dress. She slid lanyards across the table, one for each of them, and her kind eyes seemed to land on Lina's restless feet. "It's a way to notice. Keep your eyes open." The tiny bell on the table glimmered but did not ring. Priya's hopeful smile pressed at Lina's ribs. Jaden flicked his screwdriver shut with a quiet click, like punctuation to a sentence he never voiced. Mateo's grin flashed, quick and crooked. And then he looked down, doodling loops on his registration form with a gel pen. Lina wanted a team frenetic with daring. Instead, she had people who felt like the low drum beat beneath a song. She pulled the hand-drawn map from her pocket, just long enough to show Priya the corner with its marching symbols. Priya's eyes brightened in that steady way of hers. "A guide," Lina whispered, tucking it back. They clipped lanyards, the gesture simple, almost ceremonial. Overhead, banners whispered. Lina bounced on her heels anyway, as if the floor might open into some secret passage if only she pressed hard enough. Outside, the day widened. Salt air grazed their cheeks as they pedaled toward the park, the map folded in Lina's pocket like a heartbeat. The tiny toolbox symbol hovered over the playground on the page. And when they rolled up, she saw why. The metal bench near the swings rocked at the lightest touch. A volunteer in a wide straw sun hat balanced a paint tray on a drop cloth and lifted 2 brushes, one thin, one fat. "Could use fresh paint, too," they said with a friendly tilt of the bristles. "Sea glass green or blue?" Blue tugged at Lina immediately, fast, certain, the color of no hesitation. But Jaden crouched without a word, tested the loose bolt with careful fingers, and pointed to the soft green that matched calm water on windless days. Priya knelt beside him, sturdy and grounded, stirring paint with slow circles until the surface turned velvety. Mateo hopped onto the bench back, heel tapping an invisible rhythm. Lina swallowed a familiar itch for something louder. She took the wide brush and reached for green. The first stroke squeaked, cool and smooth. Sun warmed Lina's shoulders. Children's shouts hopped off the slides. Jaden tightened bolts with focused hands. Priya's brush laid careful edges. Mateo's foot kept time on the bench back. When they stepped away, the bench curved like a small green wave. The volunteer pressed a paint-smudged hand to their chest. "People notice when things are cared for," they said, voice soft as shade, "even if they never say it." They tilted their sun hat in a tiny bow that made Lina smile without the usual laugh chasing close behind. Jaden stood, wiped his hands on the rag he folded with the same exactness he gave everything, and only then met Lina's eyes. For a second, something unspoken passed like a current. Nice choice. Nice follow-through. Priya stepped back to admire the glow of green under the leaves. "Looks like ocean glass," she murmured, her dimple flashing. Mateo tapped the bench with 2 knuckles, a musician checking tone. "Solid." Lina circled the toolbox symbol on her map with a quick pen stroke. Tools meant repair. Repair meant paying attention to what wobbled. She still wanted fireworks, but a new thread tugged. The hum after a thing is made steadier. They rinsed brushes, shook out their arms, and Lina led them toward the next dot blinking quietly on paper. The library opened like a cool breath. Honeyed wood shelves rose in quiet columns, and lamplight pooled across low tables in warm circles. Ms. Chen glided a cart of returns into place, glasses catching the glow. A tidy sign perched at a craft station. "Summer Book Buddies. Share what you love." Priya greeted her, and Ms. Chen's smile began in her eyes before it reached her mouth. "Always room for helpers," she said, aligning a stack of blank bookmarks until their corners made a perfect square. She set out markers and a basket of ribbons. "Some gifts are small, but say big things." Lina uncapped a marker, the squeak immediate and eager, and then paused. Lists were her superpower. Sprint through 10 favorite titles? Easy. But the speech bubble on the map made her slow. Who would hold this bookmark with ink still bright at the edges? What would make a younger reader feel accompanied, not lectured? She hovered, listening to the room's hush, and let the question write its own answer on her skin before it reached the page. Lina drew a tiny soccer ball and wrote, "You've got this one, page at a time." Priya chose a lavender ribbon and tied an unfraying knot. Jaden trimmed edges square. Mateo sketched a cartoon dragon reading under a beach umbrella, then hid his grin when Ms. Chen softly applauded with her eyes. They fanned out their work on the desk like bright leaves. Ms. Chen aligned them into a neat spread, fingertips gentle, reverent. "These will land in exactly the right hands," she said. "You'd be surprised how often the right words find the right readers at exactly the right time." She pressed her palms together with quiet gratitude. The sentence touched something Lina didn't have a joke big enough to cover. She pictured a kid sliding a book from a shelf on a too-hot afternoon, finding a dragon beneath a beach umbrella at the border of the page. She pictured a whisper keep going, one page at a time becoming a rope across a small canyon. The speech bubble on the map earned a circle, her pen's line steadier this time. Outside, salt air stitched itself through Main Street, pulling them toward the next dot blinking over the soccer fields with a tiny clock beside it. Time, Lina thought. She had always treated time like a hurdle to clear, run faster. But this clock felt more like an open chair. The community fields glowed green, white chalk lines bright as bone. Coach Ramirez's whistle split the afternoon and then softened into her 3-beat clap. "Latecomers, run a lap," she called, then beckoned them closer. "You can scrimmage, or you can help me welcome someone new." Her gaze flicked to the sideline. A small kid in a jersey 2 sizes too big tugged at his sleeve, eyes ricocheting to the exits. His socks puddled at his ankles like collapsed tents. Lina felt the old sprint tap at her calves. Scrimmage promised speed and sweat and the satisfying snap of a net. But the clock on the mat pulled steadier, quiet as a metronome. "Hey," she said, jogging over with an easy bounce. "I'm Lina. Want to pass?" The kid's voice barely disturbed the grass. "I'm Amir." He didn't meet her eyes, but he didn't run either. Time, Lina reminded herself, isn't a race against the clock. Sometimes it's what you give away with both hands. They formed a small circle. Pass. Trap. Breathe. A breeze draped cut grass scent over them. Amir missed and flushed. The ball rolled to Mateo, who trapped it lightly, sent it back to Amir's foot, then bumped fists without words. Shoulders uncurled. The hour stretched, not fast, but steady. By the end of the hour, Amir's passes made small popping sounds that felt like doors clicking open. Coach Ramirez's approving nod traveled across the grass and landed on their circle. "Remember," she called as cones stacked and balls rolled into the mesh bag, "being there counts." Lina's lungs held that sentence a moment before letting it go. She turned the map and drew a circle around the clock, then traced back to the toolbox and the speech bubble. Service. Words. Time. 3 pockets, all heavier than they looked. Walking off, Mateo flicked his gel pen and showed her the tiniest sketch of a cleat with wings on the page margin. He didn't explain. He never did. It made Lina grin anyway. Jaden checked the zipper on the ball bag, the sort of quiet task people only noticed when it failed. Priya handed Amir a mint from her pouch, then tucked the wrapper into her pocket so it wouldn't tumble into the grass. Little things, Lina thought. They were beginning to stack into something weight-bearing. They coasted down Main Street, salt air slipping between buildings, until boards thudded under their bike tires. Gulls heckled the water. A taffy stand perfumed the air with vanilla. The parcel icon on the map hovered over Mr. Delgado's stall, where bowls of sea glass winked like pockets of frozen waves. He leaned on his counter, apron pockets bristling with tiny pliers and wire. "For the Spark Quest," he said, sliding a shallow dish forward. "We're trading thoughtfuls. Bring something that means something, leave with something that means something." Lina's fingers dove into her backpack and found useless paper bits, a flyer crumpled beyond hope, and the map itself, which felt untouchable. Her stomach tipped. Priya steadied the moment by setting down a pencil carved with little stars. "My grandpa made it," she said, voice both soft and sure. "He told me to use it for something real." Mr. Delgado nodded, as if the world had clicked one notch truer. He reached for a bead the same sea glass green as their bench. Priya's star-carved pencil settled into Mr. Delgado's special spot. He placed a soft green bead in her palm. Jaden offered a smooth, drilled stone. Mateo slid forward a faded concert wristband. Lina's cheeks warmed. Nothing felt worthy, until she wound her salt-stiff hair ribbon around a tiny shell. For someone who loves the wind. They wheeled their bikes back along the pier, charms and trades tucked into new places inside them. Near the crosswalk, Mr. Alvarez lifted his orange stop sign like a tiny sunrise and waved them over with his free hand. "Spark Quest, kids," he said, eyes bright under his navy cap. "Learn this, use this." He held up his palm. Palm. Knuckles. Slide. Tap. The rhythm snapped like a small wave and settled like a greeting that meant more than hello. "That's for I see you. You're safe," he said, the words landing with a gentle thud like a stake in soft sand. He winked and scanned traffic again, sending a stroller across with a wide, protective arc of his arm. Lina practiced the pattern with Priya, then with Mateo, who smirked when they nailed the timing, then with Jaden, whose half-smile deepened at the corners. Lina glanced at the handprint symbol on the map, not yet circled, and felt something align. Gestures were messages too. You could say a lot without a speech bubble. Pedaling away, Lina's bike squeaked every turn. The sound drilled her ear. Jaden knelt by the curb, drew a tiny oil bottle from his pocket, and tipped drops along the chain. He spun the pedal, wiped with a tidy rag, checked tension. No speech, no flourish. The squeak vanished, tied smooth. Heat rose in Lina's chest. Not embarrassment exactly, but a quick, bright thrum, like she'd found a word she'd been trying to remember all day. The bike glided silent and sure. She looked at Jaden, really looked, and saw the careful attention stitched into his hands, into the way he checked moving parts with his fingertips. He hadn't been quiet because he didn't care. He'd been caring out loud in a different language. Lina pulled the map and touched each symbol. A toolbox for acts that steadied, a speech bubble for words that bridged, a clock for time shared, a ribboned parcel for gifts that carried meaning, a handprint for gestures that said, "I see you." Her pen circled 4. The handprint waited. "Thanks," she said, leaving the word unpadded by humor. Jaden's mouth twitched, the rare, almost smile he gave only when something landed right. He pedaled a fraction lighter, and the silence between them felt not empty but full, the way the ocean feels full even when it seems flat. Back at the community center, chalk arrows curled like friendly commas across the patio. The last dot glowed on Lina's map. Handprint. The finish table waited with stacks of blank postcards and bite-sized stamps, Mrs. Ortega's tiny bell at the center like a heartbeat. String lights finally flickered, weak in daylight but promising shimmer later. "You found your way," Priya said, fingertip tracing the symbols Lina had circled. "Almost," Lina answered, pulse settling. Her muscles still contained the itch for spectacle, for a cinematic leap. But it had been a day of doors clicking open with smaller sounds. A bolt tightened. A bookmark tied true. A pass returned. A bead offered. A chain oiled. She flexed her fingers, palm prickling with anticipation like a key warming in a lock. Let's see what the last one wants. Mateo bumped her shoulder lightly, a punctuation mark that meant ready. Jaden checked the wobble of a table leg and folded a coaster under it, the bell chiming once as if it approved. Mrs. Ortega's eyes traveled from paint flecks to dusty knees. "Small doesn't mean light," she said, tapping Lina's map. Acts, words, time, gifts, gestures, people carry these in different pockets. The bell stayed quiet. "Pick someone," she added gently. "Use any pocket you want." The postcards waited like blank doorways. Lina slid a postcard toward her, thumb tapping once on the blank space. The tiny stamp made a pap-pap sound like careful footsteps. She thought of evenings when her mother's ladle moved with a small, steady music, of ginger and garlic steam fogging the kitchen window, of soup waiting before tryouts because late practice can crater dinner. She wasn't a grand speech person, she realized. She could be, if she wanted to, but truth didn't always need scaffolding. She wrote, "Thank you for making soup before tryouts. It makes everything feel steady." She read it twice, left in the quiet confidence of enough, and slipped it into the community thanks box. The bell gave a restrained ring, not for show, but acknowledgement. Mrs. Ortega's mouth folded into a smile that reached past politeness. "Notice how it feels?" she asked. Lina nodded. It felt like placing a stone where a bridge needed one and hearing the soft thud that meant it would hold. She reached for another card, thought of a dragon under a beach umbrella, and the way a ball can leave your foot and return without an announcement. She wrote, "Your art is awesome." The dragon's tail looked like wind moving. "Thanks for that pass to Amir. Keep drawing." She slipped it beneath Mateo's teal water bottle while he smirked at something Priya said about snack rations. He didn't see her tuck it there. That felt right. Gifts didn't always need spotlights. Sometimes they worked best when discovered later, the way music sometimes sounds sweeter through a wall. She pictured Mateo finding it, mouth quirking and then drawing anyway, not because someone asked, but because he was a person who made things that made other people feel seen. The bell did not ring. It didn't need to. She felt the gesture land, like a tap on a shoulder that wasn't urgent but said, "I'm here." For Noah, a postcard felt wrong. He didn't read cards. He wore paper crowns until they slumped, then asked for tape. Time was his currency, and he could smell it like cookies in the oven. Lina pulled out her phone, held it long enough to feel how heavy it had been all day, then set it face down. "Tech-free afternoon with Noah tomorrow?" she asked Priya. "Kite flying at the park." Priya's eyes lifted, bright as minted coins. "Yes," she said, simple and immediate. Lina pictured Noah's gap-toothed grin, the way he tug-tested knots twice and drummed victory rhythms on tabletops. He didn't need Lina to be dazzling. He needed her to be shoulder to shoulder, the string wrapped around their fingers, the kite chewing at the sky. She wrote nothing for him. She placed the idea in the world and promised to show up inside it. In the quiet that followed, her chest felt roomier, as if she'd cleaned out a drawer that had been jammed for months. The bead Mr. Delgado had pressed into Priya's palm waited in Lina's pocket now, warmed by her movement, a small planet against her skin. Jaden's kit offered a narrow coil of wire and pliers that looked too delicate to be useful until they were. Lina wrapped the wire in patient spirals, feeling herself mimic Jaden's economy of motion, not because she needed to, but because it made the gesture cleaner. The bead caught light at its edge and winked bench green, ocean calm. "For you," she said, clipping it to the zipper on Priya's backpack. "For your real." Priya touched it, fingers lingering. Her smile wasn't wider than usual, just deeper, anchored. "It makes me think of that bench," she said softly. "Which makes me think of us." The bell answered with a single bright peal, as if seconding the motion. Gifts, Lina realized, didn't replace anything missing. They underlined it. Words crowded Lina's throat, then stepped back. She held up her palm. Jaden lifted his. Palm, knuckles, slide, tap the pattern snapped, then settled. The handshake felt like a door clicking open. "Finish line?" he asked. "Finish line," she said, both of them lighter by a measured ounce of understanding. They stepped across the chalked line together. No confetti cannon, no booming soundtrack, just the clean scuff of sneaker on patio brick. Mrs. Ortega lifted the tiny bell and gave it a small, precise ring that traced a circle around them. "You noticed," she said. "That matters." The word matters landed like a smooth stone, placed exactly where a foot would search for it. Lina looked at her map, now worn soft at the folds, the corner symbols circled like a code she would not forget. She felt both heavier and lighter, a paradox that made perfect sense. Heavier with responsibility, maybe. Lighter because the chasing had stilled. In the lull, Mateo uncapped his pen and added one more thing to the day's margins. 4 stick figures on a green bench, a tiny dragon sharing the seat. He didn't hold it up. He didn't need to. Lina saw. The bell's echo thinned, and the ordinary sounds, string lights humming faintly, voices and bike brakes, stepped back into place. The kitchen wore evening like a shawl, steam fogging the window. Her mother, hair-pinned with a pencil, tasted soup with a thoughtful hum and double-checked the stove knobs like always. Lina reached for the ladle before her mom could. "I've got it," she said, pouring for Noah first. He vibrated in place, then stilled, surprised by the small ceremony of being served. Her mother paused, lifted an eyebrow in a playful question, and let a smile bloom that made the room feel newly lit. The bowl's curve in Lina's hand, the garlic ginger curl in the air, the way Noah steadied the table with both palms. These details grounded her more than any finish tape. Serving didn't feel like shrinking. It felt like standing exactly where she was meant to and holding her corner of the day so it didn't blow away. Later, she rinsed bowls without being asked. The habit made a soft, repeating music that felt like a promise kept to herself. Twilight stretched the field into longer green. Lina tucked a sticky note into the arch of Mateo's cleat. "You're more clutch than you think. See you at practice." She didn't sign it. He'd know. The gesture felt like flicking on a porch light, not to summon anyone, just to say the door was there. Back home, her phone napped on the counter where she'd left it. She stepped over a sea of Lego bricks and accepted a red wedge from Noah like a sacred offering. They built a boat that would never float, and didn't need to. Noah narrated the voyage with sincere drama. "Shark on the port side!" Lina made waves with her hand until their laughter filled the house, windows humming with it. When the hull finally collapsed, they salvaged the pieces together, talking about nothing and everything in the space that comes free when no one is half here and half on a screen. Morning on the pier again. Boards warm already. The sea glass charm swung from Priya's zipper, catching light at the edge. She had not taken it off once all week. Gulls scissored the sky. The breeze carried vanilla from the taffy stand. On the ride back, Lina matched her pace to Jaden's steady cadence. Their tires hummed the same note. Her chain stayed quiet, a small miracle that required no name. Before, silence had felt like a room she should escape, a test she might fail if she didn't fill it first. Now it felt like an instrument waiting. You could play it wrong, sure, ignore, withdraw, but you could also let someone else set the rhythm and find where your measure fit. She glanced over. Jaden didn't offer a monologue about lubrication viscosity or chain tension. He didn't need to. His half-smile sat easy, as if the work had been its own sentence. Lina let the wind press at her cheeks and thought, maybe finding what matters is less about discovery and more about attention, turning your head the 1 degree that lets the light in. The flyer went up on the community center door 3 days later, taped at the corners by someone who cared about corners. "End of summer block party," it said. "Saturday. Everyone welcome." Lina read it twice, and something in her chest sat up straight and stretched. Because here was the thing about a quiet, noticing kind of day. It had been good. It had been better than good, but a small, familiar voice in her had been waiting all week, tapping its foot, asking when the big thing was coming. Now the big thing had a date. She could see it already. The whole street closed off, string lights zigzagging overhead, a stage, music, a crowd that gasped at exactly the right moment. She could see the 4 of them in the middle of it, unmissable. She pulled out her phone and started a list before she was even off the steps. The map stayed folded in her back pocket, its symbols pressed quietly against her, saying nothing at all. Saturday, the flyer said, and Lina counted the days off on the walk home. Somewhere in the counting, it stopped being a block party and started being the biggest thing the street had ever seen. That night, she filled 4 pages. Not a list, really. A blueprint. Stations and schedules, and a timeline broken into 15-minute blocks, each one labeled in her neatest handwriting, which was still not very neat. A soccer demonstration. A live art wall. Music. A grand finale she hadn't figured out yet, but had already written the words "Grand Finale" for in capitals, with a box drawn around them. The old daydreams came back easily. Rope swings, driftwood clues, a moment shaped like an exclamation point. She had spent the whole quest learning that steadiness could be its own kind of spectacle. And she believed it. She did. But belief, it turned out, was a thing you could hold in one hand, while your other hand did something else entirely. At midnight, she looked at what she'd built and felt the good, buzzing ache of a plan. She did not notice that in 4 pages of blueprint, she had written her friends' names exactly 4 times, always beside a job she had already chosen for them. She got to the community center early, plan open, heart drumming. Priya arrived with her snack pouch and the first aid tin she carried everywhere, as if the world were a place that might need bandaging at any moment. Jaden came in behind her, hands in his pockets. Mateo dropped onto the bench by the window with his earbuds around his neck like a collar. Lina talked for 4 straight minutes. It was, she thought, the best 4 minutes of talking she had ever done. When she stopped, Mrs. Ortega was standing by the lanyard box with her head tilted, the way she tilted it when she was listening to something underneath the words. "That's a lot of Saturday," Mrs. Ortega said. "It's going to be huge," said Lina. Mrs. Ortega set down the box. "And what do they want to do?" Lina glanced at her friends and found 3 faces she couldn't read, which had never once happened before. Nobody answered. The quiet went on a beat longer than it should have, and Lina did what she always did with the quiet. She filled it. "Amir can do the soccer demo," Lina said, moving on, because moving on was easier. "He's gotten so good. Everyone should see it." "In front of the whole street?" Priya asked. "That's the point." "Okay," said Priya, in the particular way she said okay when she had 5 questions and was choosing which one to spend first. "Who's on water? Who's on cleanup? What happens if it rains? We'll figure it out." "Jaden could MC," Lina went on. "He's funny when he wants to be." Jaden looked up. Then he looked at the floor, and then at the window and said, "Sure." Later, Lina would think about that "sure" for a long time. It had arrived flat, with no edges, like a coin slid across a table by someone who didn't want it anymore. But right then she heard agreement, because agreement was what she was listening for. And she checked a box on her 4-page blueprint and felt the satisfying scratch of pen on paper. The week filled up fast. Lina made signs, sent messages, borrowed extension cords, and moved through her days with the pleasant momentum of a person with a clipboard. She missed things. She missed Amir tugging his sleeves down over his knuckles every single time the demo came up, until the cuffs had gone soft and stretched. She missed Jaden answering in 3 words, then 2, then 1. His sentences shrinking like something drying in the sun. She missed Priya's list of questions growing longer in the notes app she never showed anyone, each one practical, each one unanswered. She missed Mateo drawing the 4 of them on a corner of her blueprint, and then, quietly, tearing the corner off and putting it in his pocket instead of handing it over. On Thursday, Noah stood in her doorway holding the kite, string already unwound in hopeful loops. "Not tonight," Lina said, not unkindly, eyes on her phone. "Saturday's really close." He said okay. He was 8, and he meant it. He took the kite back down the hall. Friday afternoon, everything came apart, politely. Amir's message arrived first, careful and full of commas. He was sorry. He'd thought about it a lot. He didn't think he could do the demo. He hoped that was okay. He was really sorry. Then Jaden handed her back the folded MC script at the bike rack. He didn't explain. He just held it out, and when she took it, he looked relieved in a way that stung worse than an argument. Then Priya, sitting on the low wall with her snack pouch in her lap, said the thing that actually landed. "You didn't ask us," she said. "You told us. There's a difference, and you know there's a difference because you spent the whole quest learning it." Lina opened her mouth to say that she had asked, and found she couldn't locate a single moment where she had. The street was still going to be closed on Saturday. The lights would still go up. And she had built the entire thing out of guesses about people she actually knew. She walked her bike home instead of riding it, which is what you do when you need the extra time. On her steps, the same steps where the map had first slipped out of her backpack, she took it out and unfolded it. Toolbox, speech bubble, clock, parcel, handprint. 5 small symbols, worn soft where her thumb kept finding them. "Find what matters," the corner said, in someone else's handwriting. She had been so proud of learning it. And then a flyer had gone up on a door, and she had gone straight back to chasing the flare, the loud thing, the visible thing, the moment with a crowd in it. She had wanted the street to gasp. She hadn't once wondered whether Amir wanted to be gasped at. The worst part wasn't that she'd gotten it wrong. It was that she'd gotten it wrong using her friends as materials. She sat there a while, the paper going warm in her hands. And then she pulled out her phone and started over. Not a blueprint this time. 4 questions. She stayed on the steps until the lights slid off them. Then she folded the map into her back pocket and went to find Amir. She asked Amir first because he had been the easiest to volunteer and the hardest to ask. They sat on the sea glass green bench, the one with the bolts they'd tightened themselves, and Lina put both hands flat on her knees so they'd stay still. "I'm sorry," she said. "I signed you up for something without asking, in front of a whole street, and that was a rotten thing to do." Amir studied the toe of his cleat. "I don't hate soccer," he said finally. "I like soccer. I just don't like being watched at it." "Okay. I like it when it's like 4 people and nobody's counting." He shrugged one shoulder. "Is that allowed?" Something in Lina's chest rearranged itself. "What if you did the passing drill," she said slowly, "with the little kids? The one coach ran with us, nobody watching. You'd be the one doing the noticing." Amir looked up. His sleeves stayed where they were, at his wrists, uncuffed. "Yeah," he said. "That I could do." Jaden was harder, because Jaden didn't fill silences, and Lina had spent her whole life filling them. She found him behind the community center with the sound cart, which had a wheel that dragged and a lid that wouldn't latch. He had already taken the wheel half off. Lina sat down on the pavement beside him. She did not say anything for what felt to her like a geological age, and was probably 90 seconds. "I gave you the microphone job," she said, "because I would have wanted the microphone job." Jaden turned the wheel in his hands. "I don't want the microphone," he said. I know that now." She nodded at the cart. "What do you want?" He thought about it. Then he tapped the dragging wheel, the unlatching lid, and, after a moment, the tangle of extension cords she'd dumped in a heap by the door, which had been quietly bothering him all week. "This," he said. "Done," said Lina. "It's yours. All of it." The relief that crossed his face was small and entirely unmistakable. They sat with the cart a while longer, neither of them talking, and Lina found she didn't mind it at all. 2 down, 2 to go. Priya took her list out of her phone and read it aloud, all 19 items, and Lina wrote every single one down. Water, shade, what happens if it rains? Who has a key to the building? Where the little kids' parents wait? Whether the tables are the folding kind that pinch fingers, because they always are. "I'm not trying to shrink it," Priya said when she got to the end. "You're trying to make it hold," said Lina. "I get it. I actually get it." Mateo was the last, and Mateo just handed her the torn corner of her blueprint. On it, 4 stick figures and a small dragon holding up a sign with no words on it, waiting to be filled in. "You already drew it," Lina said. "I draw everything," said Mateo. "Doesn't mean anybody asked." He said it lightly, the way he said most things. It still went in like a splinter, in the useful way. "I'm asking," said Lina. "Signs, all of them, anything you want on them." Mateo uncapped his pen with his teeth. The new plan fit on 1 page. No stage, no grand finale in capital letters with a box around it. Instead, stations, small ones, spread down the closed street like beads on a string, each one shaped around the person running it. Jaden had the cart, the cords, and every latch and wheel on the block, which meant nothing squealed or tipped all afternoon and nobody knew why. Priya had the map of it, the water, the shade, the folding tables with a strip of tape over the pinching hinge, the rain plan folded in her pocket and never needed. Mateo had the signs, which turned out to be dragons doing every job on the street. 1 dragon per station, plus 1 small dragon at the very end, holding a sign that said, "Thanks for noticing." Amir had a patch of grass, 4 cones, and a rotating cast of 6-year-olds who thought he was the best passer they had ever met, which he might well have been. And Lina had a folding chair, a jug of lemonade, and no schedule at all. Saturday came in warm and ordinary, which is the best weather for something that does not need to be rescued. The street filled slowly. Nobody gasped. Lina noticed that she noticed it, and then noticed that she didn't mind, and filed both facts away. The bench got sat on all afternoon. A woman with a stroller, 2 old men arguing companionably about a bus route, a kid reading with her shoes off. Nobody looked at the bolts. That was, Lina thought, exactly the point of bolts. Ms. Chen set up a table with a basket of the bookmarks and let kids take one without signing anything. The lavender ribbons had not frayed. Lina had not known she was going to care about that as much as she did. Mrs. Ortega moved through it all with her lanyard box, and once, passing behind Lina's chair, she put a hand briefly on her shoulder and said nothing whatsoever, which was somehow the loudest thing anybody said all day. Amir's corner of grass was busy from the start. He had 4 cones and no whistle, and he ran the drill exactly the way Coach Ramirez had run it for him. Slow passes, a beat of patience, a fist bump that wasn't a ceremony, just punctuation. When a 6-year-old scuffed the ball sideways into a hedge, Amir jogged after it and brought it back with the right weight, the way it had once been brought back for him. Lina watched from her folding chair with her lemonade going warm in her hand. She thought about the version of this afternoon that had lived in her 4-page blueprint. Amir alone in the middle of a closed street, 100 faces turned toward him, doing something impressive for people who didn't know his name. And then this one. Amir with grass stains on both knees, saying, "Nice touch," to a kid whose shoes were on the wrong feet. The second one was smaller in every measurable way. It was not close. The afternoon wore on the way a good one does, without anybody steering it. Nothing needed Lina. That was the whole point, and it took her most of the day to stop looking for something to fix. Near 6, when the light went long and gold and the street started to thin, Mrs. Ortega took out the bell. It was the same bell from the patio, small, unhurried, the kind of sound that doesn't announce anything so much as it agrees with it. She rang it once, and the 4 of them looked up from 4 different stations. "You noticed," she said to Lina. "That's what I said at the start of the summer." "I remember." "You noticed," Mrs. Ortega said again. "And then, this week, you asked." She turned the bell over in her palm. Noticing is where it begins. Asking is how you keep from turning people into scenery. Lina felt the sentence go all the way in and settle somewhere structural. Behind her, Jaden was already coiling extension cords into neat loops nobody would ever admire. Priya was folding a table with the taped hinge. Mateo was carefully peeling his last dragon off a lamppost to keep. The bell's ring thinned out into ordinary street noise, and Lina let it go. They walked the empty street afterward, 4 abreast, carrying folding chairs and 1 sticky lemonade jug. Nobody had won anything. There was no ribbon, no medal, no clip of the moment to watch again later. There was a bench with fresh green paint holding up strangers, a basket of bookmarks nearly empty, a patch of grass worn thin in a small rectangle where a lot of 6-year-olds had learned to pass, and a wheel that no longer dragged. At the corner, without discussing it, all 4 of them stopped and did the handshake. Palm, knuckles, slide, tap. Amir a half beat behind, and then exactly on time. "Same again next summer?" Mateo said. "Smaller," said Priya. "Smaller," Lina agreed, and meant it as a compliment. She got home in the last of the light, put the folding chair in the garage, and found Noah on the front steps with the kite in his lap, string already unwound in hopeful loops, waiting for her without having been asked. "Tomorrow," she told him. "First thing. I promise." She started spotting the map's language everywhere. Her mother's hand on her shoulder, brief and anchoring. Gesture. The sticky note list near the phone. Words that built small bridges between plans and people. Noah pulling out chair legs, a noisy kindness for short legs and long stories. Acts. Later, when he yawned theatrically and rested his head on her arm, Lina chose to pause her own scrolling impulse and leaned toward him instead. Time. Gifts, she realized, weren't always objects. Sometimes they were choices, like giving the last dumpling to someone because you had soup for ballast and they had a growth spurt to feed. She laughed at herself for narrating categories in her head, but a good legend helps you read a map faster. And she wanted to get good at this reading, not to win anything, but to move through her small part of the world with competence and care. Later, sky the color of ripe peaches, Lina folded the map along new, softened creases. It felt heavier and lighter at once, used, understood. She tucked it into her backpack beside her pen and helmet with 2 sticker stars and thought, "It knows me now, and I know the town it drew." At practice, Mateo slid his foot into his cleat and froze. The note crinkled. Lina watched his expression shift. It wasn't shock so much as a lighter density settling into his shoulders. He didn't hold the paper up or call out. He tucked it in his pocket and jogged on, grin quiet and real. On the sideline, Jaden tightened the cap on the water jug and checked the latch on the equipment bin. Nobody saw the latch. That was exactly the point. Lina logged both in her day's ledger, not to hoard proof, but to train her eyes. She passed the ball to Mateo without calling his name, trusting the line between them. He met it like it had been agreed upon long before. At the park, Noah's kite rattled like a candy wrapper until the breeze found its angle. "Ready?" he asked, serious as a pilot. Lina jogged backward, fingers feeling the tug, letting out line in patient loops. Priya anchored the snack pouch with a water bottle and called small adjustments. "A step left. Hold. Let it climb." When the kite finally lifted into its clean bite of sky, Noah whooped, then hushed himself as if they might scare it. For half an hour, time was the string thrumming, the shade shifting, the sound of leaves skittering applause overhead. The phone in Lina's pocket stayed quiet, irrelevant. She would have missed this if she'd chased fireworks. Or maybe, she thought, this was a kind of firework drawn out, silent, still somehow lit from within. A week later, Amir received, turned, and struck a clean shot that thumped the net. He blinked, surprised by his own feat, then grinned. Coach's 3-beat clap answered. Mateo's fist met his. Jaden's nod sealed it. Lina bumped his shoulder. Confidence rose like a tide, noticeable, then everywhere. On the way home, the park volunteer in the sun hat waved from a distance, hand to chest. The bench shone a soft green invitation. Someone had taped a flyer above it, a tidy corner job Lina recognized as Jaden level. At the library, Ms. Chen held up a returned book with a dragon bookmark peeking out, ribbon unfrayed. "Told you," she said softly. "Right hands." Lina didn't need credit. The proof lived in the scuffed corners and smoothed edges of used things. The town felt different, not because it had changed, but because she had tuned to its smaller stations. It was less like standing on a cliff waiting for a flare and more like walking street by street at dusk, windows lighting one by one. Back at the patio for another event, the chalk arrows had faded to pale whispers. Mrs. Ortega's bell sat in its same spot, a constant that didn't demand attention. "You noticed," the words replayed. The sentence had stopped feeling like a pat on the head and started feeling like a compass. When Lina scanned a room now, she didn't only spot the loudest thing. She saw the kid hovering near the door, the chair that tipped 1/8 of an inch, the way someone's laugh was brittle at the edges. Notice wasn't nosiness. It was care with its eyes open. And once she named it, everything else, acts, words, time, gifts, gestures, knew where to go. At the crosswalk, Mr. Alvarez raised his stop sign and winked. The 4 of them shared the sequence palm, knuckles, slide, tap. No longer a trick, but a language. Cars paused, gulls carved the air. The town moved around them. Small, sure gestures stitched them to the day. She didn't earn a ribbon to tape above her bed or a medal to click against her collarbone. Instead, she carried a map that had softened to her grip, its symbols worn to a gloss where her thumb had circled them. She carried the way a bench held still under a stranger, the way a bookmark peeked out of a kid's paperback, the way a new player's shoulders loosened when the ball came back exactly right, the quiet ring of a bell that blessed noticing. She carried a handshake that translated, "I see you," into muscle and bone. And at home, she carried a ladle, then a Lego boat's impossible hull, then a kite string. "Find what matters," the map had said. It kept showing up, not as fireworks in a single sky, but as sparks in 1,000 moments, bright, brief, and enough to light the way forward. They rode side by side, chains whisper quiet. Streetlights blinked awake, one, then another, like patient stars. No narration, no rush, just tires on warm pavement and the easy line between them. Summer opened ahead, not loud, but wide. They didn't speed up. They didn't need to. The end.